Hatmaker. I'm the editor of Plates Northwest, and today we're going to be discussing the value of offsite construction and how this could be used to help address the UK's built environment issues around sustainability, as well as making sure we can build all the houses that we need to build, and other resources as well from hospitals and schools and everything else. Joining me today to discuss this, I have Angela Mansell from Mansell Building Solutions, and I also have Ged Couser from Forum for the Built Environment. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I just want to start things off though by talking to you, Angela, just a little bit about what Mansell does. So if you don't mind sharing a little quick elevator pitch, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a specialist contractor operating in Greater Manchester, and we have a factory situated in Bolton. And ultimately our focus is local homes and buildings for local people by local people. And to embellish on that a little more, we believe in the systemisation of construction, so applying factory principles, building some stuff in a factory, building some stuff on a site, and trying to move the agenda forward around modern methods.
Great. And then Ged, you've got a little bit of two hats on today, but mostly for the Forum for the Built Environment. So how much do you see, offsite construction and modular building kind of being discussed in the built environment right now?
I think it's becoming an increasingly important issue. I mean, a lot of it is down to the lack of conventional labour to build traditionally. I think we have to consider that there is a skills shortage that will affect the industry if we don't sort of really attack it properly head on. This idea about design for manufacture and getting things built for assembly is really about driving quality, driving speed, driving sustainability. So they're all issues that we've got to tackle really responsibly within our industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it comes to, you mentioned earlier that, you kind of get in early, you could be designing for these kinds of different methods. I mean, what is the potential that you can have when you start thinking in this way first, rather than letting it be like a solution you come up with later when all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need to make my project cleaner and greener?
I think one of the challenges here is I see the supply chain as being hugely vertically kind of linked, but with no real integration. And one of the challenges that modern methods has is earlier involvement, earlier decision making around design, around how are we going to progress with the way the buildings are built. I think that developers, clients need to show more interest, not just in what the building ends up as being, but how they're going to get to that route. I think it's really important that there is more involvement from lower down the supply chain earlier on.
And that's absolutely critical for it to be successful, because what we don't want to do as architects and designers is draw something and then have to draw it again once the contractor gets involved. We need to be drawing their systems, we need to be drawing things that they can manufacture using the systems that they have done the research and the R&D on, to make it efficient, to make it kind of work properly. Because we haven't got the time to draw things twice and three times.
I will say, I think a lot of people think of, when we say offsite construction, they go modular. And they think it's going to be this modular thing, and that's all offsite construction can be. But there's a lot more potential for using aspects offsite, rather than just being like, we built the whole house.
So I have this kind of, this idea that I'm terming deconstructed volumetric. So that is simply applying the principles of, say, building a house in a factory, but not actually building the full house in a factory. So when you build the house in the factory, you're taking up too much space, it's costing too much money. Because space is money, right? If you cover a production line with big volume units like houses, and then you produce a house and you have to store a house at the end of the production line because site isn't ready, that is where the problems occur with traditional full volumetric. If you deconstruct the principles of volumetric, where you are engaging early, designing early, systemizing early, but take some of those component pieces and actually assemble them on site and do some in a factory and some on site, that is where I think we're going to start to see the shorter term gains, and we can still have 1 foot in a factory and 1 foot in construction. And I think right now that is what property and construction needs.
And I think what we aim to do as designers, and what these guys are going to help us to do as they develop their place in the industry, is to get, say, up to 65% of a building built in a factory off-site and almost assembled rather than brought in as a modular construction. As Angela says, that's a much more efficient, intelligent way, makes transportation easier, and also we have to think about giving jobs to local labour. I think that issue of social kind of equality and I think you talked about building houses for local people by local
Absolutely,
people.
yeah.
So get that at least some of that site activity happening, with those kind of guys getting upskilled in their professions, in their trades, is a really kind of responsible way of attacking it.
We're filming this ahead of UK Reef, and I know one of the big topics there is going to be ESG, with a lot of leaning into the sustainability. We saw that a lot at MIPIM as well earlier, and I think sustainability is going to be an ever-growing theme for the UK and the built environment at large. There are benefits, sustainable benefits for offsite construction as well, right?
And for me, in the ESG agenda, everybody is focused quite heavily on people and carbon, embodied carbon within the components, within the build process, the life cycle of a building, what's the carbon element, and all of those things, of course, are really important. But people, for me, at the moment, are missing the huge piece of that jigsaw puzzle, which is people. People are a key part of the ESG agenda. Businesses need to be sustainable, employment needs to be sustainable, employers need to have a responsibility to their people to ensure that, we can offer sustainable long-term employment. And offer growth and development for people, within those businesses.
Right, but there are some ideas where you can have more sustainable construction because you're doing it offsite and you can control it a little bit better. Isn't that is correct, right?
Well, it's all about controlling waste. We've just designed a really interesting project in a school. It's called Wardle Academy. We basically transformed a gym into a teaching space. And we designed all the components in the system not to have any cuts in them. So there were standard panels, which is kind of what these guys are sort of targeting towards. So you can actually design sort of intelligently that really reduces waste and improves quality.
You can even then produce sort of economically. So in terms of those waste reductions, the systems and components we use are all designed within a BIM environment, and that everything is cut to size. We've got like a giant Meccano set that gets delivered to our facility and is assembled into 2D panels. And boards are added onto it, installations added onto those panels, and then they're taken out to site and assembled. So the reduction in waste and the increase in quality, because you're controlling the environment that these things are produced in, is second to none. And then you bolt that together on site, you are getting a much more precise solution. And again, when we're looking at the carbon agenda, the issue around air leakage and passive house and all of those issues, certainly around homes and buildings, it's absolutely critical.
And I imagine this is more than just something that's beneficial for homes. There can be other kinds of buildings that can draw from these technologies as well. Ged, I know you're here for the Forum for the Built Environment, but you also do work at BDP as well. So how have you seen, offsite construction been used?
The industry is transitioning towards, adopting it almost like a kind of as a way to do things now, but it is taking time. I'm a kind of a healthcare specialist, so what we try and design is that 65-75% of our hospital buildings are made off-site. And it's not to say that modular buildings or DFMA buildings necessarily can't be interesting and architectural. Alder Hayes is a really good example. That 65% of the building was made in a factory in Worksop, precast everything, and I think that's the way we're going as a practice to really be responsible about how we design buildings. But I think Angela hit the nail on the head, really. And for us to do that successfully as a design sort of industry, we need an earlier connection with contractors and with people like Angela and her firm to make that work properly.
So I imagine it's about kind of identifying issues that you face. When you say you want to build something, I want to build 30 houses. Mm-hmm. I know I need to do this quickly and I know I need to do this efficiently. Let me start right now discussing and talking with the people who are going to do the building rather than incorporating them later.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more of those kind of connections and the more of that approach that we can take, and the quicker we do that, then the more successful MMC and offsite will be.
Yeah.
And I know with the digital twin, that's a huge aspect for people are saying it's going to become crucial to getting planning permission. So by the time you get to that point, everyone knows exactly where the building is, what it's going to look like, and it's kind of set in stone. It gives the council confidence to get into permission, right? And it does enable things like offsite building.
I also think the changes legally that we're beginning to see evolve around the Building Safety Act and where the Building Safety Act is going, I actually think that feeds into this notion of earlier involvement with your gateways and the whole points and everything that's involved in getting a scheme to site, the days of making late decisions and late design and late specifications, I think the Building Safety Act has to be a good thing for offsite and MMC as far as I can see.
Yeah, true. And the other thing that we're looking towards the industry to do is to get a much more direct correlation and connection between that digital twin and what's manufactured in the factory. Because at the minute, in a number of different sort of people that we deal with, there's another modelling exercise that goes on before that model or that information gets into the factory to be manufactured. To get a real direct connection between the digital twin and what's happening in a factory, I think is that's where we need to be aiming for, I think.
Yeah. And then that changes the skill base. So, when we go back to the people piece, what does a construction site look like in the future? The skill base changes. So we're process driving some of the operational piece, but we're increasing the skill level and differentiating the skill level of what's required to bring construction to site. So the whole kind of digital and creative ethos that certainly this city has, construction will feed off of that, because the skills that are needed to drive that digital twin into a factory and how that evolves through, the opportunity there for, a different set of skills is, there's hope for my kids, is the way I look at it.
Well, I feel like that's a great way to end it. I mean, hope is the best note. Thank you so much, Angela and Ged, for joining me today. If you want to know more about how Mansell can help you out with modular and offsite construction needs, head over to mansellbuild.co.uk. And if you want to know more about the latest news in the built environment in the Northwest, go over to placenorthwest.co.uk, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.